The competitive 40K network presents Art of War. Art of War. Strategy and tactics. Discussions with the best players on the planet. Now your host, Nick Nanavati.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Art of War 40K podcast. I'm your host, Nick Nanavati, and this week we are joined by another Art of War coach, Jack Snacks Harpster. Jack, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I had a great time this weekend. Team events are the absolute best, and I got to go with a lot of my friends and just play.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. Yeah, you just came off of the NATC, National Team Event Championship in America, and you brought the Art of War team, which didn't have myself or Richard or John on. We brought some of our new blood, and you captained that team to first place. Congratulations. How was that whole experience?
Oh, it was fantastic. I've never been the captain for Art of War before, so this was kind of fun. And we had some people drop out, right? Richard couldn't make it. Matt Schuckman couldn't make it. You couldn't make it. There's some WTC stuff going on at that time. So looks like I'm heading the ship on this one. So I got to bring in some people to replace, those drops that I have personally a very high opinion of. And they did incredibly well. And the team as a whole did incredibly well.
Awesome. Well, I'm super excited to hear. But that's what we're here to break down, actually, kind of get your perspective on the new position of captaincy, managing all the different players, the roles, the comp, how you conducted the team in terms of pairing strategy and team composition. And we'll, of course, break down some army lists and get into the strategy of why they brought what they brought and how it all works. Then in part two, that's for our wonderful patrons. You can access that on patreon.com/AOW40K. That's where you'll get the good stuff. Jack and I are going to go round by round through the NATC tournament, talk about the actual flow of the matchups, who had the pressure, who had to bring the 20s, who had to eat one for the team. And then, of course, we're going to talk about Jack's individual games as well. If you want to subscribe, patreon.com/AOW40K, $5 a month gets you access to this episode, along with nearly 300 other episodes, and our Discord server where you can talk to guests like Jack directly, ask them questions, and get all that good stuff. You don't want to miss out. All right, Jack, talk to me about your experience as captain leading up to the event. We had drops, Richard and I couldn't go, and then you stepped into that captaincy role, and then we had to figure out players and army compositions. There's so much to manage behind the scenes. Tell me about that.
Absolutely. So I personally only want to bring on people that I think can play well, but more importantly, who I like and I think will represent us very well. And I have, my heart belongs to Art of War. But I also have a local team in the Orlando area called the Florida Alliance. So I have a very high opinion of those people, obviously, because I'm on a team with them. So I went and I mined the best talent out of that and added those to the team. So I added a fellow named Bryce Bennett and I added a fellow named Tucker Rickey to the team, in addition to Art of War standbys like Ben Jurek, Michael Mann, Mike Muzzini, Russell Tassin. Mike Muzzini, also one of the local players who we grabbed way back and has proven to be very, very good. Sasha Edelkraut, and then myself. And that team, the goal going in when we had conversations ahead of time was, I want people to play the thing they are most comfortable with and see if we can tech that sort of thing for the Knights meta we're currently in.
Yeah, I think that's a great strategy. A lot of teams maybe when they're trying to break into the higher levels of team competitive play, they think about the composition and the meta and how everyone needs to play the broken stuff that's really good right now, as opposed to factoring comfortability on a faction and like reps and experience and all that. What was your process on, Knights might be broken, we should probably bring Knights or counters to Knights, but this person only plays these factions and experiences on them?
So I basically looked at it as a range, right? There's some armies where if you pair them into Knights, they will just kill Knights. Knights can't take that pairing, and you get to win. That's the category that Tucker's GSC, who you had on the channel last week.
Yeah, he's been on the podcast.
Very, very good. He plays hosts all the time. He knows that matchup in and out. If I put him into Knights, he'll kill Knights, right? As long as it's all the bigs. He ended up playing into a lot of Armigers later in the weekend. He held it to a draw, which is great because it's not a great matchup. But he'll kill big Knights if he gets paired into it. I'll kill big Knights with 20 fire dragons that get in and out of serpents every turn. Not an issue there. Now, we don't have a third person who just slaughters Knights, which means you can't pin them. So that's not what I'm going to try to do here. You need 3 hard counters to pin someone and force them to take one of those 3 matchups. If you only have 2, they can squirrel out of it. 2 just means they can't defend. So then my goal is, I'm going to just try and make the rest of the team as generally hostile to Knights as possible. So I wanted to avoid armies that are outright bad into Knights and Chaos Knights, right? And then the armies that people are taking that are mediocre into them, take some units to help them out. So a perfect example for this would be Sasha. Sasha originally was on Emperor's Children, but Emperor's Children has a very bad matchup into Knights and Chaos Knights, especially big ones. Sasha is incredibly comfortable on Creations of Bile, so he fell back on that comfort pick, and then he took the Creations of Bile list and he added 15 Las Cannon Havocs to it.
I love the Las Cannon Havocs, Jack. You know.
Oh, I know. I know how much you love your Las Cannon Havocs. And so Sasha added those into his list just to make his army a little more hostile, right? And other than that, we just took lists, right? Bryce took Guard, Astra Militarum, and he generally tried to take a list that could put enough waves of stuff forward while also just chucking knights from across the board with 3 Dorns, 2 tank commanders, and a regular Dorn. So that's the process here. I don't really want my opposing knight armies to fall into a good matchup, but knights are, in my opinion, so good right now that unless you have hard counters, they're still going to do all right through a bunch of hate. That just kind of is how they go. So I wanted to take Imperial Knights. Now, double Knights, Imperial and Chaos Knights, can be pinned by a wide variety of targets. It's a little unwieldy. It's still good, to be honest with you. It's still very good, but it's not really what we were looking to do, and we didn't have a Chaos Knight pilot. So I asked Ben how he felt about Imperial Knights, and he seemed very excited to take the, big stompy robots that shoot everything. Now, crucially, Imperial Knights can be teched. They can be teched to kill other knights. With triple Atropos Canis and 4 Helverins, if he pairs into Knights or Chaos Knights, he'll just kill him. And so he can be part of that pairing structure while also taking the very good army.
Yeah. So you have a team that has a few designated counters to Knights, and then nobody is particularly weak to Knights outside of those counters.
Exactly. And that means that we're never particularly scared of where Knights and Chaos Knights are going to land. And so we don't have to have our pairing cycle dictated by, oh my God, who's going to get hit by the Knights? Who's going to get hit by the Chaos Knights? We don't have to live in fear, which helps the pairing process a lot.
So that makes all sense to me, and I imagine that manifested in the actual teams at ATC. A lot of teams brought Knights or Chaos Knights or both variants of Knights. Were there teams that kind of went in a counter meta direction that didn't bring Knights, but rather brought a bunch of counters to Knights that then your team who had tech for Knights was maybe a little weak against?
Not really. Honestly, considering we were taking comfort picks and generalized picks with having some tech towards Knights, like Hosts of Ascension is not only good into Knights, for example.
Right.
Eldar is not only good into Knights. In fact, it's good into a wide variety of things, but it can scare off the Knights. I didn't want to lose out on, I didn't want to lose the plot and go only after Knights and then fall into some bad things. It's take a good army, make sure it can play Knights very well.
Right. So then in the lead up to the event, that's the general strategy. Let's talk about the other armies we haven't mentioned. We have Mike Musini, who's been on Death Guard a lot. He's still running Death Guard. Any tech choices there?
No, I trust Mike that he knows what he's about with Death Guard. So I just said, take whatever you think is the best list for Death Guard. Make sure it's not weak to Knights. And if he wanted to discuss any part of his list, we could do that. But I trust he knows what he's about, and he submitted a list and did very well with it.
Yeah,
I have that trust of people who know their army very well. That if I say, hey, take a very solid Death Guard list, they're gonna knock it out of the park.
Right. Now, what about Michael Man and his 1,000 Sons? I know that's like a strong army. Michael's a great player. He's one of our Art of War coaches, but he had a tough weekend, it looks like. We'll get into the rounds round by round, but what was your thought with the 1,000 Sons going in?
So 1,000 Sons were in there just to kind of be a 12 to 14 merchant, right? Get some close wins. I talked to Michael ahead of time before the event, and that's where he likes to live, is to get reasonably close wins a decent amount of the time. And so again, Michael knows his list. I said, go for that. Make sure you're not weak to Knights. And he wrote a standard Grand Coven list. He included an interesting tech choice, actually, which panned out very well over the weekend, which was a Foot Demon Prince. 1,000 Sons have a really hard time. I mean, this is what he's told me, and it checks out. Really hard time holding their expansion or holding the middle and forcing their opponent out. And a lone op Demon Prince that can blank saves is very good for that.
Yeah, force your opponent to come very close to you to do anything about this unit on the objective.
Yep, and it can hold hands with the Bow Goats that have the 18-inch lone op. So you have an 18-inch lone op behind a 12-inch lone op, and your opponent can't interact with any of that.
Oh,
and then
that's
there's
very
Magnus raining fire from downtown.
Yeah, so I imagine that did fairly well. And then the last one, which left me scratching my head a little bit, was Russell Tassin, who is the Chaos War Master. He's playing Ultramarines.
So he tried out some stuff with the new Lord Discordant on Hellstalker and some of the other data sheets in Chaos Space Marines that got a buff. And he wasn't really loving how it played out, to be honest with you. It really seemed like he was more comfortable letting the CSM fall to Sasha and trying something new. And the Ultramarines Gladius is a very solid army that can, just get a decent range of scores into a decent amount of stuff. And then we tried out a concept of running a bunch of Centurions, which other lists at the event also took and have done well with, because the Centurions back off Knights or back off anything that runs into the center and attempts to stat check you. So the idea here is we make a list that just tries to blunt things, right? We throw it into something, it cycles cards because it still gets a lot of CP. Cycles cards, it points a lot of guns at the center, it puts a lone op Guilliman on an objective, and it says, you're getting an 8 to a 12, and that's the end of the story there.
A blunting style Space Marine list.
Exactly.
Nice. What's interesting to me is that you swapped Sasha and Russell from their usual factions. Now, Russell, as we just talked about, plays Chaos Space Marines typically. Sasha has been flirting with it, and he's been doing great on Bile in our last two team tournaments. So it's not like this is brand new territory for Sasha. But Sasha also has a ton of Space Marine experience. Was swapping those players back and forth a consideration?
So Sasha actually expressed that he feels more comfortable on Bile right now than Space Marines. The way he likes to play Space Marines is very unique.
Yeah.
And self-admittedly might not be the most effective sometimes. Whereas with Bile recently, he's just been killing people. So he felt very comfortable playing Bile and actually preferred that. And Russell actually didn't seem to feel very comfortable playing CSM in the current meta and would actually express a desire to give that to Sasha and to try Marines.
Nice. Okay, well, it all seemed to work out then. And then as we got up to the tournament and lists became live and you're seeing all the other top teams, the Midwest Monsters, the Uncles, how did you kind of feel about analyzing those different lists? What was the process and what were you worried about?
So the meta landed basically right around where we thought it would. Every team had Death Guard on it. No shock there. Most of the opposing teams had 1 or 2 Knights. And I think there's a value to having double Knights. It's a very powerful army. Both of them are. You can do some really gross stuff with it. But we didn't have a Chaos Knight player. We had an IK player who wanted to kill other Knights. So I felt very comfortable that we had dodged the majority of the hate while still getting the power that is in Imperial Knights. Like, even if you counter Imperial Knights, man, you can still lose to it. That's what we found a couple times. Was they just have one more big Knight than they should, and oh, wow, I killed your 2 big Knights very easily. Anyway.
Yeah, right.
So, like, even through the counters, even through, teching for it, unless you were hard killing them like me and Tucker were, they can still just grind through the hate. And so having it on your team is very powerful. But seeing double Knights everywhere, seeing Death Guard everywhere, we were kind of vindicated that this is the meta we expected to see. And so we felt our team was very well positioned into it.
Nice. And then were there any specific teams that you thought had interesting comps that, maybe didn't approach it exactly as you thought, but also had some interesting stuff going on?
The best teams at the event seemed to also follow the philosophy of let the players play the armies that they wanted to play. With some exceptions, it did appear that they were forcing like the double Knights, right? They had people who I'd never seen on Chaos Knights before play Chaos Knights. People play Imperial Knights I'd never seen on Imperial Knights before. But other than that, right, the Monstars, they're all playing their comfort picks, basically, except for those 2 armies. Same thing with overly competitive Uncles, right? They're playing their comfort picks, with the exception of those 2 armies. So, no, it seems like that's sort of the game plan, although they may have taken a step further by also making Chaos Knights be on the roster.
And when you were actually at the tournament and like doing the results live and after the tournament with retrospect, were Knights as big of a meta monster as everyone expected them to be, or was like the meta ready for them and they actually ended up not doing that well?
So the meta was ready for them and they still ended up doing well. Okay. That's kind of been, listen, they could have done better, I'm sure. It's the same thing I saw at the GT you interviewed Tucker about last week. A lot of Knights showed up. The meta was extremely hostile to Knights, and some Knights still punched through anyway, right? That's what you see when you see a very, very, very good army. Is it just has too much stuff. So even if you counter it, oops, like you still can lose to it. So we saw knights. People were trying to tech for knights. People were trying to counter knights, and it worked with varying degrees of success.
One of the interesting ways I've seen people try to counter knights outside of the obvious apply fire dragon or whatever anti-tank gun to the forehead is kind of out hoarding them, since knights generally have a low volume of attacks and not many models, not many OC for the points you spend on the knight. And then if you just like jam a bunch of Necron warriors or a bunch of accursed cultists or maybe 100 guardsmen, whatever it might be, that army can keep up with knights from a scoreboard perspective and even actually win the game on the scoreboard perspective. Was that a strategy anyone used that you saw?
Well, we definitely use that with the hosts, because the hosts list, GSC, might not kill all the knights, but it certainly isn't going to like lose the scoreboard to the knights because they physically can't kill that many. Other than that, like the Eldar also kind of do that. You have like 80 bodies in the list that all have an invuln. So it's the same. It's the same deal. The knights can't kill all of it. Not too much. I saw one team had 20 warriors. I believe that was the local Orlando team. Took 20 warriors in addition to like 12 wraiths. I imagine that would do pretty well into knights. I haven't seen a ton of people trying to out-hoard them, but it is a good strategy. Now, notably, we definitely took a lot of lists that can kill hordes, right? We have Guard with infinite number of shots. We have, Thousand Suns with infinite number of shots. We have Death Guard that can still, you can crack anything regardless of what it is. Sasha on Bile has an infinite amount of attacks and can punch right back through hordes.
Right.
GSC still has a ton of shots. So
you weren't weak to hordes, even if that was the counter direction.
Exactly.
Very nice. I like that overall team comp. And just like you're covering not only the counter, but the counter to the counter, which I think is a great way to ensure you got your bases covered.
Yeah, I think trying super hard to counter knights specifically would have been a problem. So instead, you just make it so that they don't have a good home. And if they mess around, they'll find themselves in a hard counter. But just make sure they don't have a good place to go, and don't leave yourself too skewed in one direction or another and put people on the armies they really like.
Did you see many of the new Tyranid Subterranean Assault? I feel like that army is super good and just nobody's taking it.
I think it's an army where you really need a pilot for it, a specific pilot. I saw a couple. Ryan Verbeck on the Monstars was playing it. I think it's something where you need a pilot who really vibes with that kind of playstyle and can do really well. It is incredibly good. Like, that detachment is crazy.
It's crazy.
It's crazy, man. But I think you do need a pilot for it, which not all teams had.
Yeah.
Like, we didn't have a pilot for it, really. Like, Tucker was flirting with it, but Hosts does the same thing. And he plays GSC and a GSC reminiscent army. So he played Bridgehead Strike. He plays this Tyranid Teleporty list. So he's very good at that sort of play style. But taking him off Hosts feels like a crime. So that wasn't the direction we chose.
Nice. So walk me through what a general pairing strategy looks like for you. Who's defending? What are they trying to pull out? Who's attacking what? And then what's the scrum look like?
So every round, pretty much, we never found a reason to not first defend Bryce on guard.
Yeah. Classic guard first defender.
Classic guard first defend. We never really had too many problems. The one time was against the local Orlando team. They had AdMech and a player who really knows the AdMech into guard matchup. So you'll never guess. We did not accept that pairing.
Right. Having one answer to guard's not too hard. Having two on their table choice, very hard.
Yeah. So we could have tried to figure something else out because our armies are fairly mid-range. But we didn't have to. So we kept defending with Bryce. And he kept picking table 2, which is very, very open.
Yeah.
All the objectives in the middle are in the open, and he has triple Dorn. So that kept being fairly favorable for him. So that's a good way to start out. After that, it got a little more dependent on what our opponents were playing. Like Ben on Imperial Knights, triple Atropos and Canis was always a pretty good second defender a decent amount of the time, depending on the matchups. The Death Guard can be a decent second defender. The only ones that really were never second defender were like me on Eldar, Tucker on Gene Stealer Colts, that sort of thing. Because I really liked saving those till the end, because those can get pretty big wins if they are paired into the right thing.
Right. So the second defender, at this point in the pairing cycle, there's still 6 armies remaining for you to potentially pair into, which means they could, out of their 6 armies, probably have 2 that can suppress your score, blunt you, or even beat you. So it really limits your options of who you want to put in that slot, because if you take one of your stronger armies like your Hosts or your Eldar, you put them in the second defender slot and then they get blunted, you're giving up a lot of opportunity cost.
Yeah.
What did you use in that second defender slot often?
So one thing I didn't mention actually was Russell's Space Marines. The second defender slot in my mind is the blunter spot, because the first defender gets the perfect table and, is just fantastic, right? Guard on an open board, need I say more, right? So they can still do very good work even in the defender spot where your opponent picks the matchups.
Yeah.
And the scrum defender, when you're working with a very small amount of opposing armies in a very controlled environment, can also get big wins.
Yeah.
But the second defender, not as much. There's still a wide variety of enemy armies at play. There's a wide variety of tables they can choose from, but not the most skewy.
Yeah.
So they can get stuck playing on a middling table against a bad matchup a decent amount of the time. So in my mind, the second defender slot is for the guy who wants to blunt things. And so Russell's job was to blunt. So he would take that a decent amount of the time. Right. Michael ended up taking it with Thousand Suns because he felt like he couldn't push for big wins with Thousand Suns and, could keep anybody honest if they decide to start pushing him. It's like, oh, you're going to get killed by Thousand Suns today.
Yeah.
So he ended up being in that spot a good amount of the time. The Death Guard is fairly terrain agnostic, is what I found, and just kind of good into everything. It has good melee, it has good shooting, it is tough, it has a lot of stuff.
That's interesting to me, right? Because Mike Musini's Death Guard list is like 9, 12 vehicles. It's like a lot of tanks. So I imagine it would want a more open board for freedom of movement.
So it's a lot of small tanks, and it has 9 Death Shroud with characters.
Yeah.
So it can kind of play on whatever is what we found. The small tanks mean that you're not going to get log jammed as much because they're on 60 mil bases and they're round. So they tend to like move around each other like marbles through a marble chute, right? They just kind of make it work.
Yeah.
And then the 9 Death Shroud, 3x3 with characters was very helpful at just like going through walls and killing things.
Yeah.
Also, I felt very good about Mike on Death Guard. So a lot of the time I saved him till the scrum because also he's just kind of an army that does good but not great into everything, right? Like 14 into everything is one of the best places for an army to be because you just don't even have to worry about it. You just pair it and it's going to get a good result every time.
And this is like Mike is a Death Guard specialist, great Warhammer player, but also Death Guard are like super strong right now.
Yes. So, there's something to be said for an army that gets, half its matchups are 20s and half its matchups are 0s. That's very good teams army, but you have to baby it. But the best kind is it's an army where, it gets 12s to 14s all the time on any terrain format against everything.
Sounds like that army's just a little too good.
Yeah, it does seem kind of like that. Yeah, no, actually, now that you mention it, yes. But I do have to keep it out of some kind of counters because the heavy anti-tank Imperial Knight lists can give it some serious problems. Not a lot of people showed up with Eldar, which was good because I think Eldar might be the best army in the game right now. It's very good. And that gives Death Guard some serious issues.
Yeah.
So we didn't have to avoid those, which was nice. I imagine if, one big Imperial Knight army, that's going to be on every team. That's fine. That's easy to avoid. But if there starts to become 2 or 3 armies where the Death Guard's bad into it, then you start having to put a little bit more thought. But that didn't really show up.
Very nice.
If you are listening to this, it probably means you play Warhammer 40k. And if you're playing Warhammer, you know you need a lot of dice. Baron of Dice is where we get our dice from. They produce amazing different kinds of dice. We just recently got all kinds of different faction dice shipped to us, which we use on our stream games. But not only do they look really cool, but they're highly customizable. You can get different symbols, corners that are square, corners that are round, different shapes and sizes, different sided dice. It's all the rage. And they're customizable in color and design as well. They are so cool looking. Not only that, but they feel great to roll in your hands. I've never held dice that roll and feel this good. Not only that, but they are scientifically perfectly balanced. There are tons of case studies on people rolling thousands of dice and recording all the results that they get. And sometimes you might get a die that rolls just a few too many ones. We've all had to throw it out before. These dice are not like that. They are perfectly balanced to a T, thousands of rolls, perfect distribution. If you want to take your Warhammer game seriously and make sure the dice are not screwing you over, get some Baron of dice.
So we got Guard first defending, we got Space Marines in with Thousand Suns second defending, and then we've got Gene Stealer, Colt, Eldar, and
Death Guard
hanging out in the scrum. How did you basically navigate the scrum? What was your goals from there?
So traditionally, the pairing strategy that we both ascribe to tends to leave your best armies, your heaviest hitters, towards the end of the pairings process, right? So my ideal scrum looked like those 3 armies plus knights, right? Very difficult way to find their, for the opponent to get their way out of having 2 to 3 bad losses into those armies if I'm pairing correctly. A lot of the time, I would select myself as the scrum defender, put myself down, pick my board, and do disgusting Eldar things to people. And make sure, now, if somebody in the scrum has a very bad matchup that's still there, I'll just scrum defend them so they can just avoid that matchup and ditch it entirely. But what we could also do is if someone has a bad matchup into knights, I go down as defender because they'll never attack me with knights. And if they do, I'll just take it. Yeah. And then they go into whatever their defender is so that there's no way they end up playing knights. Either they throw knights into me as an attacker and I take it, or they don't throw it in at all. And either way, the person attacking in won't have to take knights if they end up having a bad matchup into it.
I'm surprised knights were still making it to the scrum just because of the nature of knights in general. They make excellent defenders, but I guess against your team comp, you'll just attack them early and kill them that way. They could also go into like your Space Marines or your Thousand Sons attacking them there. Was that not a move your opponents made?
So knights are going to go somewhere, really. They could last until the scrum. They can't defend because me and Tucker were basically staying there until the end, although there were times we attacked early. They basically can't defend, so they have to attack. And if knights attack on your table, that's the perfect storm of events where I will just, yes, my list is designed to be able to fight into knights, right? The person who's defending. And they get to pick their board against the knights. Okay, deal. Yeah. So like against Bryce's guard, they're not going to throw their knights in as attackers because Bryce outranges them significantly and he'll pick a board where they can't hide.
Yeah, and in the case with Russell, he's got the Centurions and all these tools to help fight knights with his board choice.
Yep, and if they throw knights into him, I'll take it. And just, 10-10 that. Just go out there and draw with it, and we'll figure out the rest of the pairing cycle. If they found themselves towards the end of the pairing cycle, they had to decide between triple Atropos Canis a lot of the time, or Hosts, or Eldar, or Death Guard. And somehow Death Guard's the best one of those for them. That's not great. Yeah. That's a bad pairing cycle for knights.
Makes a lot of sense. And then were there boards in particular that you had to manage and navigate around for specific players? How did you do that?
Layout 8 was kind of an interesting one. Layout 8 is probably the densest board on the table. Some teams would just take that against us, right? Michael had to play into board 8 a decent amount of the time. I think he played on twice on stream or something like that. That just kind of is what it is. Somebody's playing on layout 8, and it's not ideal, but a lot of the time our armies could take layout 8. Like Mike's Death Guard, play on layout 8. Do you really want to play into 3 units of Death Shroud on layout 8? Up to you, Sasha, mono melee, meltdown, just going to run you down. I don't think you really want to play into layout 8 on that. Hosts played on layout 8 a couple times, but they can teleport, which helps a decent amount. He played into Knights. So somebody had a slightly worse matchup because of the board, but half of our armies or whatever are fine on layout 8. So that's basically the only board that we would have trouble with. And it was a manageable conundrum.
Yeah, very nice. Okay, so I know you've been itching to tell me about your Eldar list, Jack. Why don't you go ahead and talk about your elves here?
So I'm playing Warhost. This is a detachment that you and I have both been working on recently.
Absolutely.
We went in slightly different directions, but we ended in a reasonably similar spot.
Yeah.
I am running Eldrad, and then I'm running 3 Phoenix Lords, Fugan, Janesar, and Lycus. I had an Autark in here for a bit. I think actually Autarks are a huge trap. I came to that conclusion while driving home one day. I was like, wait a minute, they're kind of bad.
Yeah.
So, doubling the cost of a unit just so you get one Meltagun that auto wounds is like, I don't know if that's great. Mm-hmm. But so we had Eldrad, Fugan, Janesar, and Lycus. Those 3 Phoenix Lords are bananas. They actually bananas. A unit of Corsair Void Reavers as a cheap just throw out unit that is still kind of annoying to deal with. So if it's behind a wall on an objective, it gave my opponents fits a lot of the time is what they were going to do about it. 10 Storm Guardians to go with Eldrad, make him a little bit easier to poke out without immediately dying. And also they sticky objectives. In late game, there are a lot of OC to put on points, which has been helpful. It won me the game against Siegs at the GT because at the end I needed to take 2 objectives back, and I ran them forward and then Fire and Faded onto the objectives in order to get a 15 and be able to do double cleanse and whatnot. So they were very good. 2 Wave Serpents. You're on Wave Serpent Falcon. Different role in the team and different terrain format. Mm-hmm. But double Wave Serpent has been very, very good for me. And I fill those wave serpents with 20 fire dragons.
Yeah.
2 units of 10. They are cheaper in units of 10, and also they can all get back in every single turn. That is a play pattern that's totally fair and definitely balanced.
Yeah. Fire and Fade and Skyborn Sanctuary reoccurring those 20 fire dragons into the serpents. Absolutely crazy.
Yes, Fire and Fade is a normal move. So after you shoot, you make a normal move d6 plus 1. And that means that you can get back in a transport with that if you're wholly within 5 inches of the transport. And Skyborn Sanctuary lets you pick up a unit at the end of either player's fight phase if it is within 6 inches of the transport, so wholly within. So you just get them out and you stage the transports such that one is wholly within 5 and one is wholly within 6, and then you shoot both and then you just get them back in. It's very, very good. And it's like the best part of the list by far. Fire dragons are an absurd data sheet. They kill everything. They kill things you wouldn't even expect. I had a unit of 10 fire dragons plus Fugan kill a 20-man neophyte unit in Hosts of Ascension against Tucker. Just top to bottomed it.
That's pretty crazy when you consider these are one-shot models.
Yes. Well, Fugan has a spread shot and killed like 8 of them. And then the rest of the unit had sustained hits. I spent a CP for it. Killed like 8 more, and then charged and finished them off. Because if he hopped them away, he just teleported into the corner.
Yeah. Let's get back to your list.
So we've got 5 Howling Banshees to go with Jane Zar. We got 5 Rangers to start in midboard and to hold objectives early. 3 units of 5 Swooping Hawks and 3 units of 5 Warp Spiders.
Very nice. I know you, in this podcast earlier, said you think Eldar is like one of the best armies in the game. Is that specifically in Teams format when you're preying upon all these knight armies everywhere, or is that just kind of irrespective of the format?
I think it's both, honestly. They're like anything, there are going to be some counters. There's much less than other really good armies, I would say. And even those counters you can still punch your way out of. The one I would say that you really are going to have a hard time with would be Warrior Spam, which I haven't seen until very recently.
Like Necron Warrior Spam?
Like Necron Warrior Spam. That is very hard. It's not strictly speaking impossible. You just have to play a lot better than your opponent.
What makes this Eldar army so strong?
It has a ridiculous amount of damage. So killing things, not an issue. I know this is not Aspect Host. Aspect Host gets rerolls. They get slightly better damaging strats. But that's not really an issue. Killing things, not hard. I was tabling like Death Guard in 3 turns. I tabled a Necron army basically in like 2 turns. The amount of damage that this list outputs when you really learn how to apply the damage and how to buff the damage is quite frankly crazy. And the fact that you can get fire dragons, sustained 5s plus 1 to wound if necessary with 2 flips to 6s means you can do a lot of damage to basically any target that you want and then get back in a Serpent. And the fact you can get 2 units back in Serpent instead of Aspect Hosts like just 1 means you actually have higher damage than them too, because you can deliver more units to them every single turn. So damage output, it's crazy on the damage output, man, once you start actually activating into people. It's incredibly fast. Every single unit in the army moves like 18 plus inches, right? With a token, the Swooping Hawks move 17 plus d6 because they do absolutely everything off of an advance roll. You take the Exarch's Las Blaster, so all of their guns are assault, and they can advance, they can drop the Hawk Bombs, and then they can shoot. And they go 18 to 23 inches, right? That's ridiculous. Warp Spiders can go 24 or 27 inches and kill things, move block things, and then with Lycus, charge things. And she actually does crazy damage. The Howling Banshees go 17 plus d6 and then shoot and charge. And the shooting actually matters because Jane Zar's Shuriken is like actually really good for no reason. Full rerolls to wound against characters. It's super great for, and then she just goes into combat and murders you. The Wave Serpents go up to 22 inches, get the guys out 3 more inches, shoot you, and then get back in. So the threat range on the army is like, quite frankly, gross. I deployed everything on the board every turn because, or every game, because I don't need to put anything in reserves. Why would I put anything in reserves? My army can go up to like 27 inches and still do everything every turn.
Yeah.
My opponent can control where I go with reserves. They can't control where I go with that. Lycus is just the home objective Stealer 9000. And weirdly enough, she does more damage than people would expect. Mm-hmm. If her and her unit shoots and charges like a Rhino or a Predator or something, they kill it the majority of the time.
Yeah.
Because she does some damage in shooting. Her unit does a little damage, like a Plink, 1 or 2 wounds in shooting. And then you get lethal 5s in combat with all of the melee, and you still have a flip. So I've had her kill like a Rhino. I've had her kill Bloat Drone just between shooting and combat. I've had her kill, a predator in the Death Guard matchup. She just goes in, shoots it, charges it, dead. So the mobility is off the chain. You have a lot of units. You have a ton of units. So you can afford to throw things away multiple turns in a row. You have non-interactable shooting. You're lightning fast. You do a ton of damage. There's really no part of the spectrum that you're super bad at other than put unit in front of opponent and it live. But because you have so many units and all of them have invulns, like actually every single model in this army has at least a 5-up invuln except for 4 of the Void Reavers. Yes. That's it. So everything is an invuln. A lot of things have 3-up armor or 4-up armor. Means that it actually is kind of annoying for your opponent to kill you at speed, especially since you are taking massive chunks out of their army every turn.
Definitely. I think it's super strong. I love that you and I can have like slight variational differences. I run a Falcon with Dark Reapers and Magan Ra because he's the coolest character ever. And they're both very effective. And this obviously worked super well for you at ATC. Were you the highest scorer of the event?
I was. I got 99 out of 100.
Congrats, Jeff.
Thank you. Thank you. The basic play pattern is you put your little nonsense units behind walls. On objectives, or even in the open. Your opponent has to expose something to you.
But nonsense units, it's like the Corsairs, the Hawks, Spiders.
The Corsairs and the Rangers usually. And then there'll be a place where I'll put like a Wave Serpent, like barely touching an objective, at a place where your opponent can definitely shoot it with like one thing, but that thing will definitely get killed.
Yeah.
So they don't do it. And then you just kind of box your opponent in, remove resources every turn, because the Fire Dragons will almost always be able to shoot something.
Because you're taking, not trading at a basic level. You're getting out, you're shooting 20 dragons, and going back in your tanks.
Yes. And then if they want to deal with the units in the center, they have to expose generally more points than those units are worth. And then I kill them and I set them back up. So generally over the first couple turns, you take chunks out of your opponent's army every single turn, or you just rack up points, right? Either they sit back and don't interact with you, and you rack up points, or you just take chunks out of their army. And then about turn 3, usually, your opponent makes a big push. And they try to buy some space because they're getting hit from every angle. And at that point, you hit them with everything, you run everything forward, you box them in, you shoot them with your whole army, you hit them with Jane Czar, Lycus takes their home field objective after shooting backwards and giving something sustained 5s, right? And then you get back in your transports again, and the tattered remnants of your opponent's army can't really deal with that.
Nice. Yeah.
They can maybe get through the Wave Serpent, but they're not getting through the unit.
After a couple battle rounds of taking their resources and not trading with them, then you go and take their army off the board and threat overload them.
Basically.
It's really fun. It's very exciting. We're going to try to get you on a stream game in the Worm coming up, which, of course, if you're not a member, you should check out the Worm. That's where you can see all our wonderful video content. So I'm super excited to get that game in there. But I have a couple more questions before we head off to part 2, Jack. Now that we talked about your team composition, the theory going into it, how it all worked on the table and stuff, was there anything that you would change with hindsight, like any of the armies or whatever didn't work the way you intended?
Not really, to be honest with you. I mean, that's the thing about having people on their comfort picks. They know what they're doing. They know what they're talking about. I might take another look at that Ultramarines Gladius list, but honestly, Ultramarines Gladius is just very solid. So no, not really. I don't think I'd really change much of the comp, honestly. Nice. Everyone on the team got to be a rock star at some point. Got the requisite points that the team needed, or did a job that the team needed at some point in the event. I wouldn't really change very much.
Very beautiful, wonderful. Okay, last question. If you could give a piece of advice to a team or a player looking to get more into teams and get better at teams, take Team Warhammer more seriously, what would that advice be?
Trust your players and trust yourself. That's for the individual part of it, and then trust your players for the team comp perspective. I've seen a lot of teams turn themselves in knots trying to fill a role that it's very easy to get into groupthink, right? And to think we need something to do this role, and I'm going to make, Jeff play this army, and let's get him together, and we'll give him the best list for this army, what we think is the best list, and he will fill this role. And then we need another person. I know this isn't an army you play, but you're playing Chaos Knights now, and we need you to do this role, and here's an army you're playing. And that is very tempting to do. Everyone has their own opinions, and when you see someone doing something you disagree with, it's very easy to say, well, in singles, you can do whatever you want. But we're playing as a team, so let's make sure we're all on the same page here. And I think trusting your players, you'll just get better results. right? You might have a matrix that looks worse, but if it's an army they know very well, they will do better. Whereas telling someone to play something never works out. It never works out. I've gotten burned by this so many times.
Who hasn't?
Yes.
Yeah.
So having someone, forcing them to play a list they don't vibe with, it really is, if your player playing on your team is not enjoying and having fun with their army, they should not be playing it. If it's a new army and they're vibing with it and that they're having a great time, that's great. They will do great with it. But if they don't enjoy it, they don't normally like to play that sort of thing, and you make them play it anyway, they will do badly with it. I've seen amazing players who do poorly with armies they just don't vibe with.
Awesome. Jack, that's really great advice, and congrats again on bringing the Art Award team another gold victory. And it's a brand new team, too, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was a ton of fun, man.
Yeah, that's great. I'm sad I couldn't be there. The FOMO was real. But listeners, you can catch the story now on our podcast on patreon.com/AOW40K. Jack and I are going to go round by round through this entire tournament, retell the stories of the rounds, and go through the games. So you don't want to miss that. You also don't want to miss the other 300 episodes on there, and you don't want to miss the Discord server. So go ahead and subscribe. Patreon.com/AOW40K. And we will catch you next week.
Like what you just listened to? Check out Art of War Down Under and Art of War Unbroken on the competitive 40K network. The Art of War 40K.com.